Tennessee, David Toulis.
Yes, David Toulis, Nuclear Radio. Local economy and the free market is my argument. And I really appreciate people such as Constance Jiles in Whitfield County. She is fighting. She's doing something that the legal establishment and the police state establishment in her county down in Dalton have not perhaps seen before, and that is demanding the evidence against her. She was bogusly charged with what we call in Tennessee resisting. The statute, which in Georgia is so badly written that you can be charged with not jumping fast enough when the deputy says to jump, or not jump high enough. You are obstructing, willful obstructing his will in a lawful order. So Constance Jiles has been sending me text messages with photos of her certified letter demanding all the evidence before her first hearing in the lowest court in Whitfield County. She's been by the DA's office. She's been by the sheriff's department, demanding the evidence against her, all the reports, all the audio, all the video from Officer Lowry, the notable, courageous Officer Lowry in Whitfield County. And Constance, with her 7 or 8 children who were here in the studio yesterday, is doing what I would like to suggest you, my listener, do, and that is assert your rights and demand the proofs and demand the arguments. I've been suggesting that that if you demand discovery and don't get discovery before the first hearing, you can move to dismiss the case because there's been bad faith, lack of discovery of the evidence against you. Why would the state think that you get to go to court without anything in hand, and its DA goes with everything in hand, everything available, every record, every fingerprint, every video or audio file available to the DA, but you come to that first hearing with nothing? Is that right? Is that right? And I would say no. I would, if it were me, I would never be in that position. I'd demand everything. If I can't get it by subpoena, by the very fact that my pink note, my pink arrest citation is not going to serve as a subpoena, well, I would do it by open records and have it all in front of me before I went to the first hearing. Why? I have a right to due process. I have a right to prepare my defense and see where the holes are at the very first hearing. I've got on the phone with me Donald from Whitfield County. And Donald, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. The gentleman that come on earlier talking about, the legislation that was wrote back many years ago. Yes, that is true. And the question I have is, and I know that, well, it's not really a question, it's a fact. The fact is the federal law states that everyone follow the federal law, of course, each state. But each state is also allowed to amend their own laws, which is like post their own speed limit, put their red lights where they want to put them, their stop signs. They can do as they please, and you have to follow those laws according to the federal law. But it has to be posted. It has to be posted.
What does posted mean? What does that mean? Is it on a website somewhere?
There is a sign posted visibly for the driver to see. Visibly, whether it be coming in the state, on the road it's traveling, or whatever. And I can give you the instance, and I drove a truck for 22 years. And trust me, I had to keep up with the laws and had no choice. I got pulled over on 53 going to Calhoun. And if anybody knows that area, when you come around that curve there and it splits into 53, it puts you right in that left lane, the fast lane. State patrolman pulled me over, wrote me a ticket for being in the left-hand lane for a big truck. Well, it's not posted that trucks must be in the right lane on that road. Therefore, they had to throw that out. Anything that's not posted in the state, it falls back to the federal law. So if it's not posted, entrance of the state or anywhere on the road that they're traveling, that they must have a license, there is no way that you can convince me that you can't beat that, because the federal law states that any state can amend any law, but it must be posted.
Well, that's very interesting, Donald, because I've not seen anywhere. I don't travel in Georgia much. I try to stay out of foreign states, so I keep my travels to Tennessee. But I've not in Georgia. I've not ever really seen signs that say that you have to have a license or anything like that. So I would agree that if you're right,
that's like Virginia. You cross into the Virginia state line. What does it say? No radars allowed in the state of Virginia. No radar detectors. That's a law. If you get caught with one, they take it, you get a fine. That's the legal way of doing it.
Well, let me ask you this. Departments of Transportation in Georgia and Tennessee have authority, right? We understand that. They do have authority. Now, when you were a driver of a truck, Donald, were you involved in an activity subject to the state's authority?
No.
Well, you were. Yes, why is that? Why were you not Why were you not subject to state authority as a driver of a truck in commerce?
Well, because first of all, it was not posted on the road. The trucks are supposed to remain in the right-hand lane unless if it's not posted that you must stay in the right-hand lane, then you can get in any lane. Just like when you go down 75, it says trucks must remain in the two right lanes.
Well, look, I understand your point about. Look, I understand your point about posting, and you're saying that nothing can be argued is illegal if it's not posted. But I'm trying to get behind that to the main authority, not the particular authority on a particular curve in the road.
That's the federal law. That is the federal law.
Okay, but when you are behind the wheel of your tractor trailer or your long,
you must be licensed to drive a tractor
right?
trailer.
Okay, because that's because
federal law.
All right. Why is a license required of a tractor trailer driver or operator? Why is that?
Because they hold us to the same standards as they would a pilot.
Well, and why is that?
Because we're carrying 80,000 pounds. Plus.
And is there something dangerous about that, or is there a reason the state would be interested in the fact that you have a 40-ton load in your truck, Donald?
Well, yeah, of course they would, because you can't stop as fast as you can a car, and you're carrying a 53-foot trailer, and including the truck, you're 85-foot long.
And so there's a threat by the very fact that you're very large, very heavy. There's a threat to other people on the road, whether travelers or drivers. Would you say?
Sir.
Right. So there's a public interest, a health and safety and welfare interest in you as a truck driver, Donald, being subject to regulation.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to convince my listener that is reasonable, and that there's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing morally wrong, and I would say probably not even wrong constitutionally, but there's a restriction on the freedom of people in these large trucks. There's a restriction on their freedom to be free on the road, and that is because, number one, they're affecting the public interest, right?
Well, our number one job is, if you just become a truck driver, you don't realize this. You think you know everything, but after you've been doing it many, many years, and I've only been doing it 22 years, and to me, I still learn something every day. There's people out there that's been driving for 50 years, and they don't know everything. You're not considered a veteran until you die. That's when you're considered a truck driver veteran. It's when you're dead.
But you are getting my question is, there's a reason for regulation of truck drivers, right? Because what they're doing affects the public interest. They are doing things that are dangerous to the public on the road.
Yes, sir.
And then the third point would be that they're making a profit, right? They're making a living, and they have their principal place of business on the tarmac between the yellow and white lines.
Yes, sir. But my question to you is, if they hold someone that's held to a pilot standard, they can't charge me for something that's not posted, and I'm held to a higher standard, then how can they hold someone that's driving a vehicle without a license and it's not posted?
Well, I understand. Look, I understand your point, Donald, about being posted, but my question is a little different. What about your wife? Okay, your sweetheart your wife, when she goes to the Piggly Wiggly, stops by for gas, and then runs over to her sister's house where you have a maiden aunt who lives and who's in her 80s, and she's taking her some groceries and some knitting. Okay, so that's the errand that we're looking at from your wife, Donald. Is your wife subject to the same regulation that you are, her husband, as an operator or driver of an 18-wheeler truck?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because we're held to a higher standard. We're supposed to be professionals.
Okay, so she's not a professional running those errands.
No, she's not.
And she's not making a living doing that.
She's a traveler.
Okay. So in your mind, there is a distinction between the traveler on the road, a private user like your wife on errands there to her maiden aunt, and you, the man behind the very, very heavy, loud, noxious gas pouring truck, carrying a load for profit.
Exactly. There is a big difference.
And your point, the point you want to make to the listener of my show.
Okay, well then let me ask you.
Go ahead.
Then why is a person, if your wife gets behind the vehicle, do they tell her she can only drive 10 or 11 hours a day? And that she has to stop because that's all she can legally drive? No, she can drive 18 hours. She can drive all night. She can drive 3 days straight if she wants to. That's the point I'm getting. We're held to a higher standard.
And the higher standard applies.
Regulated.
Right, and the higher standard applies to your rig, which has a DOT number on it, a Department of Transportation commercial number on the side door.
Yes, sir.
And your wife, Donald, does not have such a number on her car or truck.
She does not. She has a tag, so she can be a traveler. Tax on that vehicle.
Well, listen, I'm really glad you called me because sometimes I think that I'm the only person who understands this distinction. And the distinction, Donald, is one that I'm discussing with the attorney Hector Olivencia, who we had on the show, and that is how we have many in Whitfield County, as here in Hamilton County. You have many strangers and visitors. I know they work in the carpet plants, and there are a lot of farms in your county. And if that person comes to Tennessee without a driver's license, they're charged under the exhibit on demand statute, which I say that's as close as the law can get to a private traveler, and it works only by misapplication of the law. In other words, it's a use of the law by the officer who knows better that the person, the Hispanic, mom there with her children, or the working man with the load of bricks in the back to go to his job. He's not involved in commerce, and he doesn't have a license because he doesn't need one. He doesn't need one because he's traveling freely and exercising, I would say, a God-given constitutionally guaranteed right. And so the closest that here in Tennessee the state can get to harassing him is the statute that says every licensee shall have licensee's license in immediate possession at all times when operating a motor vehicle, and shall display it upon demand of any officer. So that clearly we're talking here about commercial activity, because operating is commercial, motor vehicle is commercial, and licensee, if you have a license, you're admitting you applied for it and have it because you admit that you are using the road for profit, like you did, Donald, as a rig operator.
Exactly.
So what are we going to do about the problem of misapplication of law in your state and mine? Because in my mind, this is a huge problem that is a kind of harassment, especially against the poor.
Well, I think it's just a way for the states to make money. I mean, but they tax you for the vehicle when you buy it. They tax you for the tag every year. You're required to have insurance, which covers anybody else. So if you do hit them, so why would you need to have to pay to have a piece of plastic that says you're able to drive? You've already paid tax to be able to drive. You pay tax on the gasoline that goes in it. Like I said, you pay tax on the vehicle when you buy it. You have to pay tax and title fees. You've already paid your dues to drive that vehicle. And I understand they want you to have a license so they can verify who you are. But the thing is then you start infringing on a person's rights. What does it matter who I am? You know, if I haven't committed the crime, what does it matter who I am? You know what I mean? Yes, the license is a good idea. You know, it is a good idea so the officers can verify who the person is. But, you know, don't our fingerprints do that as well?
You're making a great point. Donald, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is David Toulis, and I heard yesterday at the city council a report of a woman. Her name is Louise Hammonds, and I want to get her on the phone because she has very nice things to say about the police department in Chattanooga. And it looks like I've misdialed it, but Donald is making some very good points there about the main distinction between travel and transportation, and it's important because if we want to be an open place, a welcoming place, East Ridge, Saudi Daisy, Red Bank, Chattanooga, Hamilton County, I think we need to make sure that all laws that are enforced are properly enforced. I am a pro-government person. Okay, David Toulis, you're classical liberal talk show host here, right? The Presbyterian diaconate type man here on the David Toulis Show, local economy and free markets. So the concern I have is that because we have a whole machinery of state in every county and in every municipality in the state, every single one has gotten it wrong. And I'm not saying that they've gotten it wrong by mistake. They've gotten it wrong by policy. And the policy comes from our pro-government superstate era of the 1930s when the government could do no wrong and there were very few individual rights recognized. We recognize our rights a lot more now. Like Constance Jiles recognizes her rights and is fighting to have discovery of all the charges against her in a very bogus case by Officer Lowry of the Sheriff's Department in Whitfield County. We have rights and we need to assert them. And here we have this in Tennessee. We have this exhibit on demand statute applied against people who are poor, who are ignorant. Right? They don't know how to defend their rights. They've never really thought about it. They're just working people. Many are minorities. We're talking here about African Americans, particularly. Probably half of the African American population has some problem with their license. And they're on the road in dread of the encounter with officers. That's why you have many violent encounters between officers and people on the streets. Those people they stop are private users and not even subject to the transportation statute that the killer officer is trying to enforce. And we have here in Tennessee this 351 law. It's 5550, 351, the exhibit on demand statute, which does not apply to a Hispanic person, mom or dad, or really anybody else. It doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, whether you're white or black or green or yellow. If you are not a licensee, that statute does not apply to you. And yet why? Why does the bar in Chattanooga and Hamilton County not make this point? I've not yet met a lawyer who has understood this issue and is willing to discuss it with me. The one exception is Hector Olivencia here in East Ridge, who's seeing things here and is really, I think he's looking at the law again. And that's because of his training in law school. The former avionics technician in the Navy, married to Andrea Cribben, the attorney. She is a juvenile court magistrate. So he's a law guy, and he's seeing here how his own people, Hispanic people, are facing abuse in court and by the officer. And what I want is that the officer do what's safe and right and true, obey his constitutional oath, and understand the limits on the law. And what I've done is provide what I believe is a great public service. And it's called Transportation Administrative Notice. Just Google it and you'll find it on Nuganomics.com. Our chief sponsor, that's Nuganomics.com. And in fact, I've written a lengthy statutory construction analysis of this statute, the exhibit on demand statute. And my argument is that Tennessee has a very liberal, voluntarist, and even libertarian law. It's a very libertarian law, and it's very clear. It's clear to what it applies. And it does not apply, as Donald suggests, our caller, it does not apply to travelers, but only to be effectively to truckers, right? Truckers and people who make a living on the road. That would be people who transport victims to hospitals, people who transport broken down cars to the garage. Those are people involved in transportation. This is David Toulis, Nuga Radio, 9-7, here every day at 1 o'clock. Make sure you tune in to Marie Mott at 11 tomorrow. And next, we've got the greatest national talk show host in America, Sean Hannity, right here, 93.7 FM and 95.3 FM, HD4, high definition for David Toulis, Nuga Radio. Love and patronize all of our sponsors. 800-8949.
3, 2, 1.
Chatta Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A fire broke out at a home on Orchard Knob Avenue. Firefighters rushed into the scene, got the situation under control. However, 4 firefighters were treated for heat exhaustion by Hamilton.